Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in April. I read 8 books this month and I am pretty pleased with that. Some of them were really great books and some of them were not so great books. So let's get started and go ahead and talk about them. So the first book I read in the month of April was Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This is the third Stephen King book I have read so far, I think. And this follows a man called Ben Mears, and he moves back into the town of his childhood to write a horror novel about a haunting event that occurred when he was a child in this town. But while being in this town, some mysterious, more horror haunting things happen and things start going down. So this is not my favorite Stephen King book that I have read so far. There are so many characters in this book, so it is so hard to keep track. I know that's a common theme in his books, is many characters to keep track of, but as of right now, this one was the most difficult for me to keep track of because of all the different characters in this town, and some of them don't even think I got sorted out even in the end. But this is actually a vampire novel, which I didn't even know Stephen King had a vampire book until I picked this one up. It was really fascinating. I love seeing different authors' take on different vampires, and his vampires definitely follow more of the old style, like the original myth of vampires in the lore of vampires. I really did enjoy it. It is very gruesome and there are some definitely horror things. This is definitely a horror vampire book, but I still really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's not my favorite Stephen King novel, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. This is book 4 and the final book in the An Ember in the Ashes series. I have loved this series for so long. I first read it when it first came out, and I have been following along with each new release, and I am just sad and just excited that it's all over and we finally got to see the conclusion. I will say I think this was my least favorite of the 4. I felt like there were a lot of time jumps, and so it felt like we were missing so much time and things were just like happening, but then you realize that it was like months later and you're like, where did all that time go? I also felt like there were some unnecessary deaths in this. I mean, it is a conclusion, so you know people are gonna die, but it just hurt a lot. It hurt a lot, but I am very satisfied with this conclusion and really happy with the series overall, and I still give it 5 stars. Even though it was my least favorite in the series, it's still 5 stars. The next book I read was Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is book 3 in the City of Ghosts series. It is a middle grade series that I absolutely love. It follows Cassidy Blake, who had a near-death experience, so now she can cross over to the Vale and see ghosts, and her best friend Jacob is also a ghost. Each book in this series takes place in a different city. This one takes place in New Orleans, and New Orleans is not my favorite city or location for books, and so didn't enjoy that part as much, but I still love all of these books so very much, and I love the characters. I love ghost stories and I love middle grade, so I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, even though it was set in New Orleans. The next book I read was Happily Ever After by Kira Cass. This is a collection of short stories in the Selection series. I absolutely love the Selection series, and I actually rated each story individually. So for The Queen, I gave 3 stars, The Prince, I gave 4 stars, The Guard, I gave 4 stars, The Favorite, I gave 5 stars because this was Marley's story and I love Marley. From Scenes from Celeste, I gave 4 stars, The Maid, I gave 4 stars, After the One, I gave 5 stars because Max and America love them and anything I can get from them, and Where Are They Now, I gave 5 stars because I always wondered what happened to the girls after they were eliminated, and I'm glad that we finally got to know a little bit more. So overall I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really love this, and I just love the Selection series so much, and I'm sad that I've now read all the books. The next book I read was Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee. I really enjoyed this one. This is a middle grade. This is from Rick Riordan Presents. It follows this girl named Min, who one day this investigator shows up at their house and says that her brother June has deserted the special armed forces in search of the Dragon Pearl, and the Dragon Pearl holds a lot of power in this world, and whoever has the power of the Dragon Pearl can control all these planets, can create their own planets and do all sorts of things with it. But Min does not believe that her brother June would do something like that. So she leaves her house, she sneaks out, and she goes to find her brother June to figure out what's going on and to find him because nobody seems to know where he is. I really love this one. I really love the writing. And it is sci-fi. It's set in outer space and like different planets. I really love that aspect, but it wasn't also too heavy on the science because sometimes sci-fi can get too heavy, but since this is middle grade, it was like the perfect amount. Also, this is a Korean author, and so this book is Korean, and I absolutely love that. If you don't know, I just recently moved back from Korea, so I loved being able to see all the Korean culture and the Korean language, and just the Korean mythology that was in here. I really loved it. Also, the main character in here is a gumiho. She is a nine-tailed fox. There are also tiger shapeshifters and dragons in here, and I just really loved it and enjoyed it. And I also buddy read this one with Katie from Katie's Book Nook. She finished it after me, so we were like low-key buddy reading it together, but we both really loved it, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Maybe This Time by Casey West. I love Casey West. She is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I will read anything she writes. Unfortunately, I think this was my least favorite one that I've ever read by her. The tagline on this tells you everything you need to know. It says 1 year, 9 events, 9 chances to fall in love. So basically it follows this girl named Sophie who she works at a floral company, and so she does flowers for all these events, and she meets this famous chef's son who is at all these events, and they kind of hate each other, so it's like enemies to lovers. But I just did not like anyone in this book except for Sophie. So this is set in Alabama, and Sophie has this big dream of going to New York, and I felt like no one supported her. Everyone was so down on her, and they were just like really awful to her, including her best friend. Her best friend was such a terrible best friend. I did not like her. I thought that she was really selfish and just annoying. Did not like her. Let's see. I felt like everyone was against Sophie. No one was in her corner rooting for her, and Micah was a terrible best friend. That's literally my notes on this book. So I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Struggle by L.J. Smith. This is book 2 in the Vampire Diaries series. This is a bind-up of books 1 and 2, and I read book 1 last year, and so now I finally read book 2. If you don't remember my thoughts from book 1, I think the TV show is so much better than the books. There are a lot of changes, and the changes in the TV show are so much better. Like, they made the right decisions, and it just made the story even more enjoyable and so much better. But I did enjoy the second one more than I did the first one. Elena wasn't as annoying, and it's really interesting the turn that the second book took. There's more of a murder mystery type thing, and it's really interesting too because in the TV show everyone always loves Stefan and Elena, but in the second book they're kind of ostracized, so it's interesting, but I still gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It's not a good book, but I'm reading it because I love the TV show and I want to see the differences. And the last book I read in the month of April was my favorite book, and that is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I love this book so much. First of all, I wanted to read it because the cover is like the most beautiful cover I have ever seen. Really love it. So this follows a 16-year-old girl named Decca, and in this world women are very oppressed. They're not allowed to run, they're not allowed to shout or use loud voices. They have to cover their entire heads and their eyes when they reach womanhood and all that stuff. They always have to have male escorts, and so when they reach 16 they take what is called the purity test. They go through this ritual and they test to see what color their blood is. If their blood runs red, they are pure, and if their blood runs gold, they are impure. Now Decca has kind of been ostracized her whole life in her village because she is darker skinned, and her family has kind of a bad history. They had someone way down the line that was impure, and her mom came from a different part of the world, and so she is always really worried about this purity test thing that's going on. And so when the time comes, her blood runs gold, and so they try to kill her. And then when she is sent to prison so they can kill her, this mysterious woman shows up and says, okay, you can either stay in your village and die, or you can come with me and join the Emperor's warriors. And basically everyone that is said to be impure becomes a warrior for the Emperor, and they have to go after and kill these things called the Death Shrieks, which are the monsters in this world that go and like kill everyone and terrorize towns and stuff. I really enjoyed it. I love reading about warriors. You know, they remind me of the warriors in Black Panther, all the women and stuff. It was amazing. Really loved it. And there were so many characters in this book, but each one had their own voice and they were very different. You can tell each person apart very well. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so excited to continue with the series. I can't wait till it comes out, the next one. I don't know how many there's going to be, and I also can't wait to see the cover because, like I said, this cover is just stunning. Oh, I give this one 5 out of 5 stars, if you couldn't tell. So that is everything I read in the month of April. Let me know what you read and what your favorite book was, and if you have read any of these and what you thought of them. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!